in the world of Allen Robinson as we sit
I'm
here
doing
today?
well. I'm doing well. And again, I think that the biggest thing is I do care about the fans, and I think that that's something that, again, you live and you learn. I was drafted to Jacksonville. I'm not currently in Jacksonville, but I saw how things could kind of take a shift, based on the fan base and things like that, and I always have, since that, I've always kept that in mind, is the importance of, keeping relationships, from these fans that, grow to love you, and these fans that you play in front of, a lot, and that you see in the community, and that you do different things. But like I said before, Chicago has embraced me, and the fans there, even seeing other Jags fans and stuff like that, it's like I definitely appreciate that, because again, as a player, things like that. I mean, it doesn't always come easy.
No doubt. I mean, it's a special connection, and we spent so much time talking recently that I don't think anybody wants to hear what I have to say. But we've got some fans in here. Figured we'll just open it up. I'm not gonna mute anybody. We got like about a dozen people in here, so just kind of like take turns, raise your hand, and let's get this ball rolling. So Bobby Thompson, I think he's got one.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. My question to you is, you being a free agent right now, what's something that's important to you when looking for a new team?
Well, I always say winning, and as cliche as that may be, and I kind of said last night on the clubhouse, I think a big thing for me is that I personally feel like, if I can get into a situation where I can play my game and be myself as a player, I feel like I'll definitely help any team, be able to contend for that trophy, because that's what it's about. I mean, every time that you line up and when you play in, the main goal is to win that Lombardi trophy.
Mhm.
I mean, even like I said before, it's even tough watching the Super Bowl sometimes and things like that, because it's like you want to be in that game, and that's what you grind all spring and summer for.
I mean, like just to piggyback that off that, Alan. I mean, it's when we talked, like you told your family like how important it was to play in a playoff game, right? Like, I mean, you had an incredible game against the Eagles year one in Chicago. Like, maybe it's a different story in Jacksonville if you don't tear your ACL. Like,
I
winning
personally think
means a
so. I
lot.
personally
Yeah.
think, yeah, I personally think if I was on that team, that year they went to the AFC Championship, I think that we win the Super Bowl. I mean, and I
Yeah.
say that with the utmost of confidence when you look at the players that were already on that team, and for me, just to be able to compliment those guys and vice versa, I think you have a Super Bowl champion team, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I was telling my dad, when I played in my first playoff game or leading up to the playoff game, that that by me not having that chance in Jacksonville, once I got to Chicago, like I remember being in little league and getting ready for those playoff games. And I remember the state playoffs in high school and the state championship, so and I remember that feeling, and as I was getting ready for the Philadelphia game, I had that same feeling. I think that's what makes the game of football so special. Like I've been able to keep the same feeling, before big games, before games that I've had since I was 7 years old. And again, I mean that's always special. A lot of guys say that when you don't have that same feeling that you had, like when you were a little kid, that's when guys feel it's the time to hang it up. And for me, it's amazing still to have that feeling, if not more. Of going into a game and just kind of mentally prepping and having plays played through your head, before the game. Even for myself, like I'm a very visual guy, and when it's like game week and I'm kind of thinking about plays and going over plays, constantly thinking about, what kind of release I might have against this technique. Will I have to jump for it? Will I have to, if the ball is a little low and I'm on the right side, how do I want to place my hands? Do I want to have pinkies together? Those are things I think about on the regular throughout the course of the week, just constantly having the different, okay, I may have to catch it like this. I may have to catch it like that. I may have to do this, all in my head constantly.
It's fascinating, man. It means something, right? I mean, winning matters to you guys. It really does.
It does. It does it. And again, I mean, I think as you see across the league, people don't understand and people think that, guys players are spoiled when it comes to their opinions that they may give. Like Brett Favre said that Deshaun Watson gets paid too much to have an opinion. But at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson knows how, and again, I'm not speaking for him, I'm just giving my perspective. He knows and feels how important his own career is to him. And it's like people look at Matt Stafford, and it's like Matt Stafford, for some people saying that he finally got out of Detroit. I mean, Matt Stafford is what, 33 years old? And I think he's played in one playoff game or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's been a guy who's been one of the best arm talents we saw in this league. And he hasn't ever really got a chance to compete for what everybody lines up for, which is the Lombardi Trophy. And it's tough for guys. And I think that even you see now in the NBA that kind of changes. You see a lot of guys being like, I'm trying to win a ring. And you see guys expressing that, whether if it's Kevin Durant, LeBron James when he left Cleveland, and it's like, I mean, it's very similar, and guys are starting to express that, but it doesn't come from, I mean, I guess it's selfish to want to win and to want to be in the best situation. But I mean, guys value their careers, So I mean, I think that's, why you see a lot of guys doing what you see them doing, whether if it's Jamal Adams, it's like, I mean, Jamal Adams said it. I was watching a podcast the other day. I mean, he said he wanted to win. He said that he would try to put everything together in his mind on why this happens. And it's so funny that I've been there, like I've been there, like even in Jacksonville. I remember asking Alan Hearns in my first couple of years, like I don't understand like why we aren't winning, like what's going on. But you don't really process the fact that when you're in the NFL that a team may be in a rebuild phase or they may be in this phase or that. And it's like you're not processing that at that time. You're just like, I don't understand why we aren't winning. Like I see all these other teams across the league and it's just not making sense. And a lot of guys when they're younger, they don't even start to understand that. And then once they do understand it, the light bulb goes off. And it's like, I mean, well, this thing don't last forever. So I want to win and I may as well try to go do that.
Definitely. I mean, we'll definitely want to get to another question here. Yeah. Why don't you hop in, Andy?
Yeah, Alan, I'm just curious, and I'm not trying to trap you or anything, so I know this is touchy, but what I struggle with Deshaun Watson, because everything that's being written, I think it's all true, but those guys were idiots in September too when he signed the contract. And so when something like that happens, do you think like somebody talked him into signing the deal and, hey, we'll figure this out?
No, I don't think so. I think that in most situations, and I'm not speaking for him, I'm speaking for a majority of first round draft picks. When you're the caliber of player that he is, and when you're that high caliber of player, like there was no chance that he was ever going to be able to hit free agency or something like that to be able to decide that. I mean, for quarterbacks and stuff, they could we saw Kirk Cousins get franchise tagged twice, so it's like with a talent like that, I mean, he had his 5th-year option that they would have, of course, picked up, and then 3 more years that they possibly could have franchise tagged him or whatever. I guess if he had to just waited it out, he would have had to wait probably 4 more years.
Yeah.
So situations like that are tough. And at that point in time, I'm sure he probably believed in the organization or whatever they had going, so it probably wasn't nobody to talk him into that or anything.
We got a question from Zach here, but to piggyback off of that real quick, like you, I don't know if you know Deshaun well, but like just the times I've talked to him, Alan, like he is such a glass half full dude. Like he looks at the positive in every situation. I really think he was trying to see the good going on there.
For sure. I mean,
he did.
I could just tell by the way he plays. Like I remember the one time like he threw the ball. I think he got kicked in his eye or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing his eyes like bloodshot red, and he's finishing the game. Even watching him in college, and just hearing people talk about him, that players like that have a special character. That's and I think that's something that kind of goes, I don't want to say unnoticed, but I think for myself, when I hear people like Brett Favre say, like, you make too much to have an opinion, and it's like, man, come on, man. This dude is in the community. He's beloved by his teammates. Like you'll never hear somebody say anything bad about him. So it's much more than just like you earn too much money to be able to have an opinion.
Good.
No doubt about it. I mean, and you're in that same vein. I mean, you're absolutely the last person. We got Jim Monis on here. He's my podcast co-host. I mean, he scouted you to come out of college. He talked to everybody that knew you. It's like, right, Jim? I mean, everybody that you talked to about Allen, like this is the last person that's going to ask for the ball, the last person that's going to make a scene, like old school to a T.
Alan, I followed your career. Obviously, we were, I was working for the Bills, and we drafted Sammy Watkins coming out when you were coming out. But I think about my biggest question to you: have you ever played with a really great quarterback? Because man, I followed you you had McGloin, you had Hackenberg. You go to Jacksonville, and we know Bortles was what Bortles was, and I know Trubisky gives you everything he has, and I admire that about Trubisky. I really do think he wants to be a great quarterback, but does part of you ever think, man, what if I just played with one of these just great quarterbacks?
It's so tough to say, because I think that
Yeah.
not tough to say in that sense, but I personally feel like I remember in college, when McGloin was it and is one of my more favorite teammates that I've ever had, So I mean, like when I played with McGloin, like he knew how to get me the ball. He knew where I wanted the ball at, he was a big part of my first breakout year. Like I didn't play too much as a true freshman, and the same, and that's where situations become so tough because it's like same with like Blake, like my second year in the league, I had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns, you know what I mean? And he was throwing it. So it's like, over time you build such a relationship with guys and different things like that. And when you play with them and you see what everybody goes through, and it's like, it's so tough to say, man. More so, I'm always so focused on myself and how I can get better and how I can make any situation better that I'm in, and that's kind of how I look at it. Like, I think even this year, I think that Mitch grew a lot mentally. I remember, talking to him those weeks where he wasn't starting, and just kind of helping him get through that. A lot of guys when they're on their rookie deals and young in the league, like they hadn't yet experienced some adversity. A lot of guys start to experience some adversity in different situations around year 3, year 4, some guys year 2. And it's like I've been there before. I remember talking to David, when David was frustrated and things like that because he felt he wasn't able to really, give to the team and get going how he knew he could, So it's like I've been in those shoes and I understand how it is, and I have a lot of respect for those guys and for my teammates in general. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Oh, definitely does. I feel, Tyler and I talked about on the podcast last night, we're always pro players. Like, hey, none of us would have jobs if it wasn't for what you guys do and your talents and your work ethic. And I'm always in the player favor. And I love what's going on right now in the NFL. And I hope all you guys get to succeed and play for teams that, doing things the right way. And it broke my heart. I worked with Ryan Pace and Josh Lucas with the Bears. I worked with those guys with the Saints for years. And I know they're good guys, but it breaks my heart, to hear that you haven't even had contact from them. And that doesn't make sense to me. And that's a whole other subject. But I hope for you, yeah.
And then even then, I do understand as a player, like I'm not like, this isn't my first rodeo, like I'm going into year 8 and I understand that it's a business, and again, I mean, that's what makes the situation so tough. That's why, again, I never took it personal. I never, I'm not emotional about it. Like I have a ton of respect for the coaching staff, for the front office in Chicago. I do, they're a big reason why I came to Chicago, but just like I said in the article, at those times when it's two different individuals doing business or whatever the case may be, and there are other factors and stuff that start to play into it, you do sometimes come to a fork in the road, and again, I mean, and as unfortunate as it is, it's not personal, it's nothing to get, over emotional about or anything, it's sometimes that's how things go.
Okay, can I ask one more thing?
Oh, yeah,
and then
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
no
and then
doubt.
I'll back off because I just, I want to make sure I hit on some of this because, I know you're from Detroit, and I just remember that Penn State Michigan game. That one's always on your highlight reel. Was Michigan ever in consideration for you, or was that your way of just saying, "Hey, you guys should have come after me"?
That was definitely my way of that. It's funny because at the time before, so my senior year, at the start of my senior year, and pretty much for the majority of my time in high school, Rich Rodriguez was the coach. And, for him, he had, that was the Denard Robinson era. He had a lot of guys coming from down south, and his system was just different. It was a more scattier receiver and skill position kind of system. So they didn't even recruit me much at all, you know. And then once I started to get some interest from them, it was when Brady Hope got there. But I was already committed to Penn State and already gonna sign in that spring, you know. And same with like Michigan State. Michigan State actually offered me to play corner, and I didn't, because I knew I wouldn't. I knew I wasn't going to the NFL, you know, to play corner. At that point, it's just like I really hated tackling, and I actually had a great feel for the receiver position. I mean, looking in hindsight, I personally think I could have played corner. I remember being at Penn State sometime, and just like when we had the sanctions and stuff, I would go on defense and guard some guys. And I mean, I had corner is in my DNA, so I definitely think I could have played it, but I wanted to play receiver.
Jim, if only Terry Pagula bought the team a little earlier, you know, he's a
Hey.
Penn State guy, and then he would have
He
been
is.
really
He is a
pushing
Penn
for
State
Allen
guy.
Robinson in Buffalo, right?
Well, I can tell you this, Alan. During that draft, you know, Doug Marrone was our coach at the time, and he and Bill O'Brien are best friends.
Best friends.
Best friends. And I mean, you were high. I always want, this is my last question. I feel bad because I know other people probably want to ask, but that draft class, that receiver draft class was insane. You know, that 14 draft.
No, it was deep. And it's so funny because I
Deep.
tell everybody, like, man, I was frustrated on draft day. Well, just because, like, and then as I'm sitting there watching draft, because I had like a draft party, I had it on, what was that, Thursday and Friday. I thought it was a chance of me going first round. I think it's funny that that in that draft, I met with Carolina that Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, the week before the draft. Like, they came to my house and I met with them for 3 days. And at that point, I thought for sure, I walked out of that like, I personally think I'm really going to Carolina. That's how I'm thinking. And I also, it's funny that because we had Coach Pagano this year, Indy told me when I visited Indy, they said, look, like, we don't have a first round draft pick. If you're on the board when we pick, there's no way you're falling past Indy. And actually, as I was sitting, because I ended up leaving my draft party or walking outside, I was extremely frustrated, and I was tracking the draft on my phone. Indy pick comes up, and my phone rings. And when my phone rings, I'm like, all right, well, I'm frustrated, but I'm like, man, like, I think it would be dope. It's Andrew Luck, T.Y., Reggie Wayne. You know, I think that'd be a great core for me to come into the league with. And it was Jacksonville. And then I said, everybody, like, after they said that they were drafting me, I didn't understand it because they didn't have a pick in another pick. And then my agent called me and said that they traded up. So the whole draft process, man, it's hectic. From the time you declare for the draft until you finally on a team, it is chaos.
I always tell Tyler, Alan, I said, if people understood, you know, it's a $1 billion industry and all this goes into it, but when you go through combines and pro days, it's a mess. It really is a mess.
It's so like I know
Yep.
dudes who came out with me that went to the East-West Shrine game, Senior Bowl, combine, pro day. I knew dudes who, I forget who it was. Some guys had like 10 to 12 workouts with teams. So that's about a total of 17 visits. Then you get drafted, and then right when you get drafted, probably 2 weeks after that is rookie minicamp.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And you're worn out.
And you're beat.
You're
It's
beat.
insane. That rookie year is tough.
they
Oh,
trot you
we've
guys out
never-
there in the underwear and everything at the combine too. You know, it's like cattle.
Yeah, it's never made sense to me as a personnel guy. I hate it. I hate the way we do things. You would think you would try to cater so these guys would be able to like your senior year is stressful enough, or junior year when you're declared, like you put enough into your college season, and then you get run through just everything, and you just have to learn how to be a track athlete
For sure.
3 months, and then you got to go back to being a football player.
Exactly. That's the thing. See, that's what hurt me. I had to really, like, I couldn't turn that switch off. If my body and running mechanics and stuff was what I knew now, then I think I would have boosted my draft stock a lot just based on my 40 times and stuff like that. Like,
No
I couldn't really understand the whole track aspect of like running and stuff that fast, because you only get a really like a month and a half to really kind of train, and you don't understand like how you can get faster, like in what ways as far as your own just running mechanics and stuff like that. So that is definitely something that I don't think is mentioned enough, is that you really almost turn into a track athlete because you running so much, over those 2 to 3 months.
All right, Zach, let's hear it. You've been so patient.
Of course. What's up, gentlemen? And thanks for making time for this. First, couldn't agree more with what Jim was saying about player empowerment. And personally, I feel like the power dynamics between owners and players have been out of whack for so long that I've been excited to see this kind of reckoning happen. But thinking about being a fan, I'm just curious because as a Bills fan, my grandmother 3 generations back was in Buffalo her whole life. And now down to me, I've lived in 5 cities in the last 10 years, still going all over the place, trying to get my career started. So those things that you typically think about driving fandom, regional affiliation, and following the arc of a player from the time they get drafted to when they become a vet and retire, if those things go away, if you're, raising kids and telling them and you want them to have the best experience as an NFL fan, get the most joy, would you still want them to root for a team, or do you think it's going to go more towards people picking players? I hear the kids are rooting for just the players on their fantasy team. I'm just curious to know from your position how you kind of see the nature of being a fan evolving in that way. Thanks again.
I think no problem. Thanks for the question. I think a little bit of both. One, because I look at myself as a very big NBA fan, and I grew up a Pistons fan, and seeing how the NBA changes. But what I do think is that I think that all markets across, kind of comparing this to the NBA is they're going to have their time. I remember when Milwaukee was good with Michael Redd. Granted, when some of those, and Ray Allen, and granted, when some of those guys left, you have your downfall for a little bit, then another guy comes in, whether if it's same with the Lakers, so it's rather if it's, fans or teams. I think it's always, in the sports world comes full circle. Like I said before, I mean, even look at, the Clippers. They had Lob City, and then once those guys left, now you have Kawhi and Paul George. Same with, like I said, with the Portland Trailblazers. I remember when Portland was good with Pippen and them, and now they're good with Dame. Same with Utah. Everything kind of comes full circle. So if you want to just stay to be an avid team guy or a fantasy player guy, I think that you'll be able to have, the best of both worlds anyway.
Good stuff. Randy, I think you get your hand up, right?
Hey, thanks, Tyler.
Yep.
And thanks for doing this, Alan. I'm a former college offensive lineman, so I don't know too much about playing receiver, but my son is an aspiring receiver. So I've been watching so much receiver tape over the last 5 years, and you're one of the guys that I point him to as far as look at the passion this guy plays with. So
I appreciate
he's a
it.
big Washington fan. He's a big Washington fan, so like me, so hoping you wind up in DC. So
I appreciate it.
So the free agency is a transition. Obviously, you've already transitioned from Jacksonville to Chicago before, so you understand what the transition's like going from one team to another. But when you were in college, you also, even though you stayed at Penn State for your whole college career, you had a huge transition there from Paterno to Coach Paterno to
Yep.
Coach O'Brien. And I always felt like when I was watching that go down that, the guys who stay at Penn State and are good enough to play in the NFL are going to have such a leg up on other guys because they're going to have gone through this turmoil and stuck through it. And that's going to help them down the road. And I'm curious about whether or not you think that experience going through that tough transition has helped you.
Most definitely. Yeah, I think that helped me a lot. Just being able to kind of handle adversity and really just kind of put your head down and chug away at what you wanted your ultimate goal to be. I think that a lot of guys, and I even think Jalen Ramsey said it. It's like when you come into the league, I mean, you would love to play your career with one team. And in the NFL, that doesn't always happen. For a lot of guys. I mean, we even saw Tom Brady, of all people, who played, I forget however many years for New England, switching teams. So it's the guys do for sure come into the NFL, kind of have that in their mind. I think that most guys would love to play with one organization if they could for their entire career. But I definitely do think that my experiences at Penn State and being able to handle that adversity and go through that adversity as a kid, really, I think that helped me a lot in the NFL.
How crazy was that, Alan? I mean, we've seen the
Man,
documentaries. Like, how insane was that period? Because you guys, I mean, like, people like us are coming to you to answer questions for something you have absolutely nothing to do with. Like, I can't imagine.
and
I was in the
yeah,
Packers
and
locker room, and I remember going to Andrew Corliss, like, "What do you have to say about this?" And he's like, "I have nothing to say about it."
it was such a crazy experience. I'm actually in the process of getting some stuff together to kind of shoot my own doc, not my own personal doc, but a doc on that whole Penn State situation. So that's something that's in the works now. But it was crazy, man. Like when I say it was literally like a whirlwind, that's exactly what it was. I never forget like even how it happened. So we had a bye week. Um, I was coming back to Penn State. I think I ended up leaving like on Wednesday or Thursday, so to go back home with a couple of guys who were from Detroit. And as we're driving back up, I remember one of my roommates texted me and was like, "Yo, like, have you like saw this?" And I'm like, "Nah." I'm like, I didn't really think too much of it. Though. I was like, "Oh, like that, like it just sounded crazy, But sounds like any other thing sometimes that you hear when you're in college. You know what I'm saying? Where you don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's true. Like, what I'm saying? I didn't give it too much validity. So then Monday comes, we're practicing. Joe kind of speaks on it and says, like gives his whole spiel, and it's not too crazy at this point. Like I want to say we may have had one or two reporters outside of our football facility. Tuesday come. Now it's about 40 to 50 people outside the football facility, and now is the actual story and everything that is gaining like legs, like more than a couple. Wednesday comes, it's 100 people outside of like reporters, 100 people outside of the practice facility. Thursday is when Joe resigned, but we practiced. We had to practice inside. Joe wasn't at practice. We had to practice inside because it was like two helicopters flying over our outdoor field. So we practiced inside. There's probably 200 reporters out there. Joe ends up resigning. That he calls a team meeting. He resigns that evening. And then all hell breaks loose, like downtown State College. Like you got people like students tipping over news vans, like shaking down light poles. It was insane. Like one of the most chaotic things that I've ever seen.
I mean, I think we've talked about it before, a few years ago, but like any party you just want to get the hell out of it. Like, why am I associated with this universe? Like, why stay? Why commit at that point when the Penn State name is taking a hit like we haven't seen before, really?
Um, I actually so once we got to the bowl game, because I guess playing a little bit more at that point in time in my freshman year. Um, I had said that if anybody in house for Penn State had got the job, I was gonna leave. Um, it just was, and it wasn't even based on the whole situation. It's just like everything was so old school, even more than I thought it would be based on. I mean, I was a true freshman. I didn't red shirt, but I thought I should have been like playing, and I'm watching other freshmen like kill, what I'm saying? Like freshmen All Americans and everything. I was like, I remember telling my dad, like, man, like I just want to play. Like I'll go to a MAC school. Like I could care less. I literally just want to play. And then we got Bill O'Brien when he came in. And I finished the year as one of our probably like the fourth receiver. And then my sophomore year, the depth chart the spring ball depth chart kind of comes out. I'm like literally probably the last of everybody on the receiver depth chart. Like it's probably literally about 11 receivers in front of me. I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. But as I'm going through spring practice, and the reason why I stuck it out was because not only did Bill O'Brien come from the NFL, but his whole entire staff did. Like Coach Stan Hickson, who actually coached in Buffalo as well, he came as the receiver coach. He had coached in Buffalo and with the Redskins. So it was guys on the coaching staff who came from where I was aspiring to go. And I thought for myself that was huge for me. And it was O'Brien just wasn't coming from the NFL. Like O'Brien came from New England, being the OC, being the quarterbacks coach with Tom Brady, being the receiver coach with Randy Moss. He had a ton of experience that I thought personally that like I have to try to gain everything that I can gain from this dude because he's coached at the highest level. The same with our receiver coach. he coached Stevie Johnson, some guys, and that's even where I started to kind of tailor my game from Coach O'Brien and Coach Hickson, Coach Stan Hickson, because they would send me tape of Welker, of Moss, of Stevie Johnson, all those guys when I was in college. So this was like I was able to really kind of start to tailor my game, and then to really polish it over years and years and years to get it to where it's at today. But I tell everybody, Coach O'Brien, man, is he's one of the more pivotal people in my career. I think that he came in at a very special time, for myself, and he had a great impact on me as a young receiver.
Great stuff. I mean, and Stevie Johnson, I mean, those routes are unlike any other. We got a few good questions out here.
Insane.
All right, Dan Murphy. Oh, yeah, right. Dan, let's hear from you, man.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks, Alan, for making time for us tonight. We were talking about the 2014 draft, and right now it feels like we're kind of in the middle of like a historic receiver boom going on. And you look at how spotty receiver drafting track record is. Guys kind of going. You look at the order they're picked in. It's no way to tell how it's going to pan out. You go back to 2014. You were what, like the 10th receiver drafted? You weren't even the first one drafted by the Jags. I mean, we had Monos mortgaging my Bills' future for 3 years of Sammy Watkins' crazy ass. Thanks for that, Jim. So what do you think it is about scouting your position that's so hit or miss?
I think that personally, I think a lot of guys look at the numbers a little too much, and I think that when you start to look at film more and see what guys do, even why a lot of the slot guys who come from smaller schools have success. I mean, they're the same players. They just don't have some of the numbers, but I think that when you really just look at the skill set of it all, I think that gives you the story right there. I even look at myself and kind of how my skill set was in college. I mean, I personally, I'm not gonna say I knew that I'd be able to kind of like translate my game and stuff to the league, but based on my skill set, I think that where I even went in the draft was all based on numbers. And even over the years, guys are always looking for that next kind of guy, if you will, at whatever position or kind of, size, speed, whatever it may be that people see. Even a person like Jefferson, who got drafted from Minnesota. Like, I mean, watching him in college, I mean, I personally knew he was going to be the kind of player that he is in the league. I mean, he had great film. He was a good route runner, has good speed, good size, can high point the ball, catches very well over his shoulder, and the same with like Diggs. I mean, Diggs has been one of the top receivers since he was in high school. Like, I think that, I'm not sure if he was in my same class or the year after me, but I think Diggs at one point was the number one receiver in the country, and it's like he's always had that skill set, but then once guys go to the combine, some guys may run faster 40s. Some guys may jump, more broad than others. And that's kind of where things are kind of hit or miss because, I personally think that people start to trip themselves out and trick themselves based on different sizes and speeds rather than really, evaluating the film and then letting the film set the precedence for everything else.
Great stuff. And definitely, just throw your hand up. Or we got the little icon there. So I know Bobby and Joe have a couple questions here. So whoever wants to go first.
I'll go. If you don't mind, I'll go first. Alan, my question to you is you've been covered by the best corners in football. Which one is the hardest to go up against?
I probably would say Stephon Gilmore.
Mm-hmm.
For me, playing against him over the years, he first and foremost, he has very good size for a corner. But he's very strong at the line of scrimmage, meaning that once he gets his arm on you, a lot of guys, when they just put an arm on you, you don't even really know it's there or not. Gilmore has the ability to be able to put his arm on you and actually slow you down a little bit. So you got to try to, and also he doesn't have to get too physical. He tries to mirror and then get his arm on you. He's able to stay in front of a lot of guys, even guys like Darius Slay. Now he's like kind of like to the contrary. He's a very, very, very quick dude, who tries to stay off and tries to cut you off. And then you got guys like Jalen Ramsey, another one. He's a guy who plays a lot more physical, and he's starting to kind of, mirror up his game with some of the more soft and inch out coverage to kind of give you a change up, So I probably would say the guys who have, the size and athleticism, are typically some of the best guys and typically some of the harder guys to go up against.
Real
it
quick.
seems-
Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby.
Oh, I'm sorry. It seems to me like Gilmore like runs the route sometimes for receivers. I'm a Patriots
Yeah.
fan, so seeing him do that,
Yeah,
it's
now
like
that's another thing too. I think it's pretty obvious and evident that he has great film study habits. I think that's something that definitely you can tell, like you said before, he knows some of the concepts that are coming before. He's aware of down and distance. He's aware of a lot of different tendencies.
thank you so much.
No problem.
Gilmore's great. I mean, he's a
I
lot
love
like
him.
you, Alan, just like super personable and everything. But like, just when I covered the Bills, I remember that year, right? Jim, I mean, you were there when you guys went to London and played these guys. I think Stefan, like the week up to that game, was like, yeah, Alan, I can handle Allen Robinson. Like, these routes, I can handle. It'll be no problem. And you had a big game in London. Like, did you look at those
Yeah.
comments at all? Do you remember the week lead up at all?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think that was my first time playing against him. I know he was good.
Yeah.
At that point in time, I really didn't know too much about him. So it's like, again, like I know he was good, but I didn't really hear too much or think too much of it on that end. But I did have a decent game that game.
You did. Nickel Roby got screwed though. That was not a defensive pass interference from what I remember. Right, Jim? Like,
Which play was it?
there was like it was like a third down late in the game. I mean, the thing is like he bitched about it afterwards to us and was saying how terrible of a call it was. And then he didn't get fined. So the league basically said, "You're right, Nickel. Like it was a bad call." But it wasn't on you. It was some other receiver. He got and it basically sealed the win for you.
I remember, yeah, 'cause the game came down to the wire. I remember Allen Hurns scored a touchdown like on the front pylon, a diving catch. And we won like on a last 2-minute drill. I played some exciting games in London. I will say that.
Yeah. All right, Joe, what you got?
Hey, Alan, how you doing, man? Nice to meet you.
What's good, man? How you doing?
Good, man. I got 2 quick questions. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. First, we always hear about the NFL, like the NFL players trying to be like the NBA players when it comes to like power and so on and so forth. How come we don't see like free agents or like star players team up, like kind of like LeBron and like, you always heard like how the big 3 in Miami formed. Like they were on a bus one day and it just said, "Hey, let's make a super team." Why don't other players, you think, do that in the NFL? Like, why can't you just call like Deshaun Watson and be like, "Hey, let's try to go somewhere together"? And like, I feel like that doesn't happen all that much in comparison. And I wonder why that is. And the second question I have, which is different, if it's cool, do players and do you find that NFL players and yourself read what people say about you, like in the media or on TV or in articles? Because you always hear people say like, "Oh, I don't watch TV. I'm not listening to any of that." Do you find yourself doing that a lot? And do you think a lot of players do the same thing as you do? Thanks.
Yes, I'll start with your first question first. Well, it's literally because for the NFL guys, free agency ain't so free. Like guys don't have the ability to be able to do that. Now, granted, maybe a person like JJ Watt. I mean, JJ Watt is hitting free agency for the first time in however long. Like, I mean, he's probably maybe 11 to 12 years into his career. But again, like free agency is not truly free. Guys you look at Le'Veon Bell, I mean, I'm sure that's something that he had in mind. He got franchise tagged twice. You get Kirk Cousins, same franchise tag twice. So it's like, I mean, I guess if you're going to continue to just ride it out, guys technically can. But you look at LeBron, I think Bron played 4 years in Cleveland and then went to Miami. So it's like, that's the difference between the NBA and the NFL is free agency. Once guys play their contract out in the NBA, I mean, they're free agents until they say that they're not. I mean, all the best players in the NBA have the ability to hit free agency, and for the most part, they all have. And in the NFL, guys they don't have the ability to have, that say so. Sometimes, yeah, but most times not, especially when you have the high caliber players. And then your second question, personally for myself, I do see, I mean, I'm a Twitter guy. I grew up with Twitter. And Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm on there a lot, and I'm not for sure not going to let any fans or media, run me off of that. I mean, I've been on it now for almost a decade. So I do see a lot of this stuff, and that's even why for myself, I talk to the media. How I do, I'm pretty open with the media because at the end of the day, it's like, if people have any questions or anything like that into my mind or have anything to say, I mean, like I said, I see a lot of the stuff, and I like a lot of the stuff, because it keeps the chip on my shoulder, always, and I appreciate it and I enjoy it, and it also gives me the ability to be able to kind of state how I feel.
Great stuff, Alan. I can't remember who was next here. Andy or Dan, maybe? Whoever wants to jump in.
Dan, go ahead. I've already asked one.
Hey, Alan. First of all, thank you for everything you have done in the Chicago community. My question to you is, what was your relationship like with Mitch Trubisky?
Me and Mitch had a great relationship. Again, I think since day one, since I got here, being able to kind of put in the work, to try to continue to get better and try to continue to improve our offense. I think again, once, you hear a lot of the media speak on, quarterbacks and stuff like that. And at the time, I don't want to say that things get muddied up in that sense, but, we're the guys that are, my locker is next to his, it has been since I came to Chicago, so I'm always be able to sit down and talk to him, whether if it's football, or whether if it's just life, all the time I say, I mean, I'm not going to be a receiver forever, and Mitch Trubisky is not going to be a quarterback forever. So at the end of the day, when you bond with these dudes, through the ups and downs and the good and bad, at the end of the day, you all people, man. And one day you're going to sit back and laugh at all the things, how they went down and playing, the things that people may have said and all that, because again, I mean, there's not something that lasts forever.
No doubt. Well, hey, Alan, we got two more for you here, man, and we can't thank you enough. Like this is
no problem. I appreciate it.
This is
man.
not normal.
Enjoy talking to you guys.
I mean, we've got a star in the league just hanging out, drinking, chilling on a Friday night. This is great. So thank you everybody for subscribing, for hanging out. This is awesome. We got Adam and Andy. So Adam, let's hit you first. We can't hear you.
There we go. Hey, what's up, Rob?
What's good?
So my question is kind of about the stuff you were just talking about with the media, because the one thing us reporters in Chicago have always appreciated your openness and your willingness to talk, and not only that, but I mean, doing the story like what you did with Ty and what you're doing here. Not a whole lot of athletes do that, and that's kind of the root of my question, because I'm always fascinated by, if it's up to the teams, right, they, for the most part, don't want the athletes to say a whole lot, whether that's due to strategy or scheme, but I feel like it goes beyond that too. Whereas I've always felt like the more the athletes speak up, interview, get out there, that helps their brand. And I feel like you've embraced that. So, just I don't know what kind of thoughts you have, on it, but it's definitely fascinating me, because I don't feel like enough athletes speak up the way you do.
Definitely, and not even to the brand. It's just like I remember, like again, like I always say, I'm a Twitter guy. So I give you like a Detroit game at home that we lost this year, for an example. And I see people like go through the whole third down play. It's like, why didn't he just get the third down? And it's like, I mean, I can tell you exactly why. I mean, we don't have to, sit here like, well, it's like, once I caught it, I'm thinking I didn't know he slipped. So as I'm explaining to it and say I'm coming back to the ball, it just makes more sense, and it allows people to see things from a different perspective. I mean, because again, I mean, we're in the game, we're playing, so small things like that is like, when I see people, it's like, like, I mean, why didn't he do this or why did he do that? And it's just like, I mean, you can express yourself as a player, and again, things are a lot more, understandable. I do think that sometimes where you have the frustration, I think that myself, this year in Chicago, something I thought was funny was, obviously I'm a 50-50 ball guy, and losing a few of those throughout the course of the season, I started to see that became a narrative, and things like that. Obviously, I know people like to run with those, but for myself, I just thought it was, funny. And even again, that's why I talk to the media, just because I like to hear both perspectives. Somebody wants to say, I'm not a 50-50 guy. Okay, well, why do you think that? You know what I mean? I may lead the league in contested catches and I may, lose a couple. You know what I mean? I've been in the league now almost 8 years, and things happen, So it's just always been able to kind of, get that I don't want to say clarity, but being able to just kind of express yourself to the fans and also to the media, because again, that's really just what it is. It's just information being given. And for myself, I always want things to be able to be reported, as properly as they can, and as real as they can, with real information, especially like talking to Tyler. I think that a lot of stories and stuff can get muddied up when players just sit back. People may think this, and that's the thing. And as media, obviously guys give their assumptions. They may assume one thing, they may assume this, they may assume that. You see stories where people are saying I'm asking for 26 million a year or whatever the case may be. And it's like you can just easily just say, no, that's not the case. I mean, this is what's going on or this is what's happening, and it clears up everything. And again, I understand that teams probably do hate that for whatever reason, but as a player, it's so tough to just sit back and just, let people start to create assumptions and everything, because I'm a big person of perception is reality. And for you as a reporter or for a fan, whatever they perceive, that's their reality.
I mean, teams really do kind of push that centralized messaging. It's like guys deserve to have a brain of their own. I think really.
For sure,
I mean,
for sure.
You don't need babysitters.
And I do understand when it comes to scheme and stuff like that, but like if you ask me a question about myself, and I can answer that question without throwing anybody under the bus or, giving my true, honest opinion, to keeping everybody else, keeping everything like in house and not, again, throwing anybody under the bus, I'm gonna do that. I mean, because there's no reason not to. Like I said before, whether if it's taking somebody through a play on a Monday after a loss, as frustrating as it may be, this is what happened. I mean, again, and as a player, you start to understand it rather than kind of be so rebellious against the media or so against the media. It's like, I mean, you can just have that conversation. It's like, okay, well, why do you think that? I mean, it's more times where sometimes again, with me being on Twitter, I want to sit there and ask the reporters questions. You know what I'm saying? I would do that if I could, just of the simple fact that I'm okay. Like when somebody sees a play or something, okay, it's like, why do you think that? Like I remember watching the Super Bowl and somebody's like, that's a guy, like a media report, like that's pass interference. It's like, no, it's not. Quarterback's outside the pocket. He can push a guy out of bounds. Like, I mean, that's, you feel me? So for myself, I mean, I sometimes after games and stuff, based on what I see people say and report, I really wish I could just, but again, as a player, you don't want to seem like you're, coming off or being this guy. But it's I really just, from a conversation standpoint and from a clarity standpoint, would love to ask the media questions sometimes.
But Alan, you know what? To be honest, I think Ty would probably say the same thing. I think 95 to 99% of us reporters, like we want to get it right. We want to have it.
For sure.
We want it to be right. So like when you say you want to ask us questions, I love that. Like, because if I ever have something wrong or I don't know something about a play, and obviously we're not going to know everything, we don't have the playbook. I want to be told that. So
yeah, for sure.
That's why your approach is so helpful, because there's so many other players that just, they won't say anything, they won't explain anything, and that doesn't help us get it right.
Yeah, and I agree, and I totally understand. That's even why I try to go about it how I do. Like sometimes maybe something may be frustrating that is said about you or something like that, but for the most part, it's certain things. Okay, like why does this person think this or why does this person think that? And it's just from time and time again, and it's like everybody gives their opinion. And a lot of times based on what they may hear or what they may see, you can clarify that. Like I remember talking to somebody on Twitter and they were saying that like I wasn't blocking or something like that. But again, I mean, not knowing the blocking scheme or if it's an RPO or what you can do, it's like a lot of people don't know the small details within the game, and for myself, whenever I can, I try to help, express that and help educate, on that.
Andy, let's hear it.
Alan, I'm just curious. I've been surprised especially with stars, and as you've become more painfully aware of contract negotiations, do you see guys trying to get more guaranteed contracts? And I ask that from the lens of, you always hear these really huge numbers, and then the guarantee is usually much smaller than that. But it cap straps teams. And so I'm surprised that guys, if somebody wants 60 million guaranteed. Give them an extra year, make it guaranteed, and it's 15 a year on the cap instead of 20. Because if somebody gets injured, you're paying for it anyway, virtually. So do you see it going that way at all, or is that just a non-starter?
It's tough because I think it's something that has to set, precedent. Like people always talk about NBA and their contracts, MLB. And it's like for the NBA, all those contracts aren't guaranteed. You know what I'm saying? Like I know some of my buddies who play in the NBA and some of those guys' contracts aren't guaranteed, but it's a precedent that has been set from the top players that if you want this player, then their contract will be fully guaranteed. And then that transcended down and down further and further and further and further to where majority of the contracts are guaranteed. Like we saw Kirk Cousins sign a fully guaranteed contract. I personally thought Mahomes was going to, and that he could have. I thought that was going to be the next fully guaranteed contract. I don't think that anybody would have said anything wrong with him signing I forgot how much he signed for, 350 or something like that, 10 years, 350 million fully guaranteed. I mean, I don't think anybody would have been, opposed to that based on what he's done thus far. So I think that also something that would help all of that is I think that the salary cap or the way that it is has to change a little bit. I think that there has to be other things around the salary cap because I think the salary cap in the NFL is structured which is crazy, for players to get their max value on another team, which I think is backwards. I left, Jacksonville and I got more from Chicago than I would have gotten from Jacksonville even prior to the injury. And you see guys signing on different teams, getting these mega deals. But in the NBA, a person like Dame Lillard, Portland Trailblazers can pay him the most. If he goes anywhere else, he'll have to take less. And I think that gives an advantage for teams being able to truly stay together and even small markets being able to possibly keep more guys and things like that. I think that would be something to whereas like they may have to pay people more, but I think as far as an NFL standpoint, I think it will be a lot better. You won't see teams having only 3-year windows to win the Super Bowl. I think you'll see more dynasties of teams and teams being able to stay together and players being able to build together. But now it's so tough based on the salary cap that guys are going to take a significant loss one way or the other. If you have a quarterback who's paid a significant amount, now you may not be able to pay O-linemen, or now you may not be able to pay guys on defense. And I personally don't think it should be like that. I think that especially if you draft a guy, I think you should be able to pay him and also keep some of the other guys you drafted. Not, well, we drafted a great draft class, but we can only keep 3 of the 7. I don't think it should be like that. I think if you draft all those guys or whatever the case may be, you should be able to keep that team together and possibly be able to compete year after year after year after year for Super Bowls. And I think that you'll see a lot of guys then be able to, have dynasties and have teams that stay together and stuff like that.
Man,
so like
well
something
said.
where maybe they'd like the team that drafts you, your salary only counts 75% of your salary counts towards the cap or something to basically reward.
I don't know if it would be, because I think how it works in NBA is, it works with, I forget what it's called, but it's something to whereas you can go, I forget the specific name, where you can go over the cap to re-sign your own players.
The bird rule.
Bird rights, yeah. So in the NBA, they have bird rights. And with those bird rights for guys that you draft and when they're on your team for a certain amount of time, you acquire those bird rights. And with those bird rights, you can go over the cap and you also can pay those guys a percentage more. Like example, when LeBron left Cleveland to go to Miami, Cleveland could pay LeBron the most money at that time. When Kevin Durant left OKC, OKC could pay him the most money at that time, so on and so forth. Like we saw Steph Curry and Giannis get big contracts over the past year or so. And both those teams could pay them more than any other team. But now in free agency, now that may hurt them a little bit, but also they have the ability to go into the luxury tax to be able to go over the salary cap and sign free agents. And I think, again, that's why you see so many teams in the NBA move how they do. And I think that the NFL would very much, I think with adopting that, I think the league would be a little bit better. I think that, when you look at certain teams, again, that draft really well, they'll be able to keep their guys. Now it's so tough where it's like, okay, like we got these guys on this rookie contract. We got these guys on this vet contract. So we got to make it work right now because half of those guys are leaving.
You know
when
how
the
pissed the
when-
Rams are going to be if they do that? Those guys haven't drafted anybody in 5 years.
Yeah, but even then, see, that's the thing. If that was to change now, you would have guys like Jalen Ramsey and you would have guys like Robert Woods, who by them being on the team for a certain amount of time, that team has now acquired their bird rights. So let's say I think Robert Woods signed a 3-year extension, but once Robert Woods plays that contract out, the Rams have his bird rights. They would possibly be able to go over the salary cap to re-sign him back. The same with Jalen Ramsey or whoever else or what other guys that they acquired. And again, I think with that being said, they'll be able to keep those players and keep those teams around, which I think will be a very dope aspect to the NFL, rather than guys being able to get their max value elsewhere rather than the team that they were currently on.
Such a great point. I mean, Alan, you've been incredible. I know we got like one more question if you got time for it, right? Dan, somewhere.
Yeah, I got time. I got time for one more.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Alan.
No problem.
Daniel, I think you got your hand up, right? Maybe not.
It was on accident. Sorry.
All right. Well, anybody else got one more for Alan here before we sign off?
Yeah, I got one. Hey, Alan, nice to meet you. I hopped on a little bit late here because I'm from Buffalo, but I'm taking a road trip with my fiance down to Florida, and we just passed through your old stomping grounds of Jacksonville. But my only question for you is, how do you like your wings? Because obviously you're coming to Buffalo to play with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. So, what are you, hot, medium, mild kind of guy? What do you like your wing? How do you like your wings?
It depends. Most of the time, mild, but I do like hot from time to time. I will say that, I could definitely go for some nice hot wings with a side of ranch. Sometimes I might dip into the blue cheese, but I'm more so a ranch guy myself. But I definitely would say medium and then hot on occasion.
Alan, come
Hey,
on, dude.
Appreciate
Ranch.
so much
Oh.
your time today too.
Thank you
No
so
problem,
much.
man. I appreciate it.
Seriously, Alan, that was amazing. I mean, thank you so much for joining,
problem, no
answering
problem. I
everybody's
appreciate it. Thanks
questions.
for having me.
Like the insight was incredible. So, I mean, really appreciate you and thanks to everybody for coming in. It means everything to me and everybody
you so
here. So
much.
thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Got
you.
it, man. We'll be in
All
touch.
right, man. Y'all take care. Have a good weekend.
Too.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Alan. And hey, thanks everybody for coming in. That was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ty. That was great.
You got it. All right. Well, we'll all be in touch. Hit me up anytime. Email, Twitter. Let's hopefully see you back here next week. I'll keep trying to get some guests here and keep it going.
Thanks, man.
Thanks
Awesome.
so much.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.